Hello, my name's Siris. I want to remember you. You're important to me.
I'm not making this video to complain about Snowbreak's new direction. There are only half a dozen people in China who know who I am, and none of them works for CSUN, so it wouldn't really matter if I was anyway. I just want to explore what the practical effects of that change in direction are. If you're interested in Snowbreak's characters, or unsure of how they might change in the future, this one's for you. While we're going to be talking a lot about character, I want to say up front that every fictional character should be judged in the context of the media they exist in. Snowbreak's developers have said they want to make a master love game. We'll get into more of what that means later, but we need to judge the new character direction in light of that goal. In a general narrative, a character being good means they are compelling in some way or serve some function in the story. In a master love game, a character being good means something entirely different. Even if we say that a master love game has bad characterization, that doesn't mean that it is bad within the context of what the game is trying to do. In this video, we're going to look at how the character Siris was set up initially, what sort of retroactive changes have been made, and how she was presented in the most recent patch where she took a leading role.
Past Siris, present Siris. Is one of them the real me, and one of them not?
A fictional character is defined primarily by what they want, what they're willing to do to get it, what they're able to do to get it, and how they relate to other characters. Character arcs usually follow them on a journey to get what they want, though they don't necessarily have to succeed. Maybe what they're willing to do or what they want changes instead. This is the basis of character growth. A character's arc is completed when they no longer have any desires strong enough to warrant a narrative. Or, put another way, when there's no more impetus for them to change. Not all stories need to have character growth. If they're short enough, it's fine to spend the story increasing the audience's understanding of what the character wants and what they're willing to do instead. Usually, it's necessary to give the audience a greater understanding of why the character wants what they do in order to make this sort of story interesting. Snowbreak has surprisingly deep characterization methods, but they are scattered throughout the game and easy to miss if you're not digging for them. In addition to the main story, each distinct operative has a personal file with a relevant side story, and each character has 5 bond stories, roughly 10 pieces of furniture with unique lines, roughly a dozen skits and base of which you can only view 1 per day at random, a variety of voice lines for various situations, and they may also appear in event stories that may not be viewed once the event ends. This is on top of the character profile, character trailer, intelligence received for completing puzzles and base, and anything other characters say about them in their own stories.
I have no memory of anything from before the Titans came. Don't know who I was, what kind of life I lived, if I had a family.
It is fitting that Siris' characterization is the most fragmented of the bunch. She has appeared in 2 of the 3 non-permanent events and has significant information tied to other characters like Xinjing and Cherno. If you joined the game after patch 1.1 or didn't actively seek information out, it is very easy to have missed what makes her so interesting. First, I'll give you some general background on Siris as we knew her before patch 1.8. Siris was diagnosed with selective memory loss as a child. In the base event, we learned that her REM sleep cycles are abnormally short, which prevents her brain from transferring her short-term memory to long-term memory efficiently, and also prevents her from dreaming. One of her opening lines when you talk to her in base is, "I hope I won't forget too much when I wake up tomorrow." We also know from a puzzle reward in base that Siris reviews her memories according to the marked priorities every day to ensure normal daily and social interaction and progress at work. Based on this, we know that Siris can remember most things normally until she goes to sleep, at which point most of the day's memories are lost. In another dialogue line in base, she notes that she is slowly learning to recognize everyone, which confirms that, over time, her permanent memories do continue to grow. Her morning memory routine is a key aspect of her character. Every day, she wakes up and studies what her friends look like, what their names are, what her relationship to them is, and also information related to her missions. She is a genius of hard work in an area where she has almost no innate talent. Her motivation for this superhuman effort is her desire to form relationships with everyone, despite her difficulties in remembering them. In addition to selective memory loss, we learn in her first personal file that Siris also suffers from severe face blindness. This means that she is not only largely unable to recognize someone based on their face, but also that she is very bad at following maps.
Which way should I be going?
As we see in the Mingdeng Festival event. She can understand the map when she looks at it and determine where she is and where she needs to be, but she cannot keep track of the festival's complex layout and often misses a turn or staircase. She spends most of the event lost and separated from the group, but she always remembers her mission and even makes notes of stalls selling particularly tasty food. Finally, there is no guarantee that Siris will retain minor information if she doesn't make a note of it. In one base event, she greets the adjutant and then heads to the bathroom. 5 minutes later, she does it again, and again. She remembers the adjutant because of her early morning study session and growing recognition of her long-term coworkers. But whenever she walks into a room, she acts on the information immediately in front of her without necessarily remembering what happened just prior. We learn in another base event that she enjoys jigsaw puzzles precisely because she doesn't have to worry about what came before. She can look at the circumstances in front of her and decide based on that what to do. In another base event, Siris talks about a movie Acacia showed her where an AI is forced by its creator to delete its memories at the end of every day to prevent it from gaining feelings. The AI creates an outside company to store its memories and has them reload the memories each morning. This is an exact parallel to Siris' situation where her memories are effectively flushed at night and reloaded in the morning. Siris enjoys this movie because she feels that if an AI can do it, then she can also avoid becoming cold and unfeeling by carefully maintaining her external memories. This base event foreshadows the theme of Siris' Bond story. Her fear of forgetting important relationships drives her to remain distant from the adjutant, which, if not remedied, will lead her down a different path to becoming cold and unfeeling. To summarize, Siris can remember information from sunup to sundown if she studies it or makes a note, but minor details can easily slip through the cracks. When she goes into a deep sleep, a few memories are stored permanently and the rest are lost. She does not have dementia and isn't likely to forget where she is if she remains awake, nor is she likely to forget talking to you if you have a substantive conversation with her and then leave the room. She may forget some details of the conversation, but she will write down the important ones and retain some memory of having talked to you recently. However, if you merely exchange greetings, she is likely to forget. I just want to take a moment here to acknowledge that despite all the words I've just said, we've only scratched the surface of the character. I wasn't kidding earlier when I said Snowbreak has deep characterization if you dig for it. It wouldn't be a bad idea to take some notes of your own, but I'll remind you of the important details for major points.
Yeah, I look weirdly young for my age. I mean, so does Caroline.
Now that we have a bit of background about what Siris is able to do, let's look at how we were introduced to her.
Victory, defeat, these things have their roots. It will play out. Don't worry, I'm present. Every speck of dust a sign. Gotta keep pushing. I have to protect her.
Siris first appeared in Xinjing's trailer as a silhouette. At the time, she was not yet in-game, so players knew only that she was someone another character wanted to protect. Shortly thereafter, the Mingdeng event launched, and Siris officially made her debut. But in order to understand her characterization, we need to spend a little more time with Xinjing. Xinjing was the first new character added after closed beta testing ended. In direct contrast to Siris, she suffers from hyperthymesia, a condition which dooms her to remember everything she experiences in perfect detail. She comes from a strict family with powerful connections and suffocating expectations. Prior to the Descent, the semi-apocalyptic event that set the story of Snowbreak into motion, Xinjing worked in the Yggdrasil Neuroscience Laboratory. Her job was partially a cover to get her foot in the door at a powerful megacorporation, but she genuinely enjoyed working there and getting to know her coworkers. Among her new friends, one in particular stood out and made an extra effort to welcome Xinjing despite the latter's inexperience in building relationships. Siris. Siris is a capable neuroscientist who was interning in the Yggdrasil lab when Xinjing joined. She didn't always remember her name at first, but she did always make Xinjing feel welcomed. As their relationship grew, Xinjing revealed that she hated being able to remember everything as her mind was constantly flooded with unpleasant memories. In response, Siris told Xinjing that it was her job to remember all of the happy moments they had together until the unhappy memories were squeezed out of her mind. On the day of the Descent, Siris had invited Xinjing to watch the Valkyrie Games finals with other members of the Neuroscience Laboratory. Xinjing gladly accepted, but her family forced her to take care of other business at the last minute. Siris waited for Xinjing at the games and sent her several messages, but before she received a reply, Titans descended on the arena and most of the people in the area were killed. In the chaos, Siris lost her recording pens and notebooks and was seriously injured when she was struck by a Titan. On top of this, her home was located in the area and was sealed off deep within the containment zone.
I hope they open up the zone soon. Let me go home. There's something I need to find there.
While she eventually recovered, she lost all of her recordings and had no way to reach her home where her memory backups were. She could no longer remember her family clearly and retained only indecipherable fragments of the short time she spent with Xinjing. When they met again on the Heimdall Force, Siris couldn't tell if Xinjing felt familiar because they had met a long time ago or just a few moments prior. Siris has never been able to shake the feeling that she's waiting for a friend to arrive. Xinjing, of course, remembered everything. She blamed herself for being absent and was tortured by the thought that, had she been present, Siris might not have lost all of her externally stored memories. However, rather than burden Siris with the knowledge of memories she couldn't recover, Xinjing decided to pretend that she was meeting Siris anew, while also resolving to never again be absent when Siris needed protection. The red string bow she wears is a symbol of her commitment to protect an important friend. To summarize, Siris is intelligent, friendly, and caring. She puts enormous effort into remembering the people around her and building friendships with them despite her limitations. In the short time that she knew Xinjing, she was able to leave a deep impression. However, after the descent, she lost access to all of her notes and can no longer recall the faces of or details about her family and friends. Despite this, she remains cheery and is hard at work getting to know the members of the Heimdall force.
We're done? I'll upload the recording.
With this basis, we can already make a good profile of Siris as a character. Earlier, we said that characters are defined by what they want, what they're willing to do to get it, what they're able to do to get it, and how they relate to other characters. Siris primarily wants to build friendships with the people around her and also recover her memories of family and friends that she's forgotten. She's kind to everyone and isn't so absorbed in chasing her past that she will become a burden to her new friends, though she strongly desires to reconnect with her missing memories. While she has memory issues, they are well defined and she has several strategies to mitigate them. If I may divert us temporarily, I want to quickly point out the ways that her character on paper informs the physical appearance she is given and her voice lines. Siris wears a camera or a recording pin on her chest that records everything that she does. This allows her to store entire missions or important moments in something more tangible than notes. The overcoat she wears doubles as a memo board. She constantly has notes attached to it and can even be seen attaching more in her mission outro. We can even tell she is right-handed as her notes are all attached to the left side of her coat. We learn in a base puzzle that she is apathetic about dressing up, and we can see this in her relatively plain appearance and hastily drawn back hair. When she's not in combat, she balances her shotgun on one hand as if she's weighing it on a scale. This is a reference to her Deimos, the god that resides in her subconscious as a result of her contact with a titan. She is a manifestation of Osiris, specifically his post-dismemberment and resurrection form, where he is tasked with weighing the souls of the dead. The first thing Siris says to the player upon being summoned is,
I want to remember you. You're important to me.
And if placed on the home screen, she will say,
I hope they open up the zone soon. Let me go home. There's something I need to find there.
The stage is immediately set for the two things she wants the most. If she is defeated in battle, her primary regret is that she never found her lost memories.
I haven't found them. The memories.
Now, let's look at how this character grew in the content before patch 1.8.
Forgetting a person you've met really isn't very polite.
Siris is the oldest character that doesn't appear in the first 10 chapters of the story. Instead, she was introduced during the Mingdeng Festival event, a chunk of non-permanent content that has not been available to play since it ended. Players who joined after the game's first month thus permanently missed out on key character moments.
Mingdeng the Lantern Festival. The sky lit up the whole night through, floating lanterns entrusted with a people's hope. Mission objective takes priority. Everything else is a distraction. Do you have a safe way for us to transport them? Easy? You wish.
The main character of the event is Shinjing Ethereal Cloud. Up to this point, Shinjing was characterized as distant from the other members of the Heimdall Force, slow to make friends, and focused on her duties to the detriment of her relationships with others. We knew there was someone she wanted to protect, but until the event started, we didn't know who was so important to her that she would risk everything else. Near the beginning of the event, the adjutant and most of the Heimdall squad is asked to provide extra security at the Mingdeng Festival. Shinjing was asked separately to help the Taigu Connect logistics company transport some resources for use in the festival. Prior to the festival day, Shinjing cautiously asked Siris if she is going to see the lantern lighting ceremony, and Siris eagerly says she is and, once again, invites Shinjing to come with her. Shinjing accepts, but is afraid that she may once again break her promise if her duties force her away at the last minute. She feels especially guilty because Siris is unaware of the earlier broken promise and has once again reached out without knowing the pain she suffered last time. Siris immediately gets lost, but Shinjing is busy with her task and cannot leave to find her right away. While making her way through the crowds, fragmented memories of crowds at the Valkyrie Games swim through Siris's head, and she gets the familiar feeling that she is waiting for someone. Even so, she still takes the time to help a lost young girl find her way back to her grandfather amidst the chaos. Near the end of the event, a new sort of titan appears and threatens to wreak havoc at the festival. To Shinjing, this feels brutally similar to the titans that showed up at the Valkyrie Games during the descent and injured Siris. Determined to prevent a repeat of before, she takes on the titan by herself and defeats it. With the titan slain, she reunites with Siris and the adjutant. This time, Shinjing is the one to invite Siris to watch the lighting ceremony, and she is finally able to make good on her promise to her first true friend. As the ceremony draws to a close, Shinjing asks Siris if she has a wish. Siris replies that she thinks she's been waiting for someone very familiar, but can't quite remember who. Shinjing assures her that she will, one day, remember. Shinjing is the character that grows the most over this event, but she is so closely related to Siris that we learn more about the latter's character as well. In addition to learning how she relates to Shinjing, we see how she is, in Shinjing's words, enthusiastic, curious about everything, kind and understanding to everyone she meets. We also get hints of what both of these characters want. Siris wishes to remember someone she once considered important. Shinjing wants to be free to enjoy life with her friends and is bitterly disappointed by the knowledge that one day, everyone, not just Siris, will forget the time they spent together that day.
Someone's probably looking for this.
Now that we have firmly established Siris as a character and explored some of her relationships with the other characters in Snowbreak's world, let's zoom in on her relationship with the adjutant. Operative personal files are meant to showcase how the adjutant gets closer to each character. For base characters, They revolve around some conflict central to that character, while 5-star variants add additional factors into the mix. For example, Shinjing's base personal file covers her rocky introduction to the Heimdall Force, and her 5-star variant has her ask the adjutant to help her with a personal matter where she ultimately decides to break free from her family's expectations. As you might guess, the conflict in Siris's personal file concerns memories, but not her own. Siris and the adjutant are tasked with escorting a young refugee to a temporary shelter. It's a young girl named Nina who refuses to allow any military personnel to help her. Siris is quickly able to calm the girl and asks a series of basic and unassuming questions, but the adjutant makes the mistake of asking the girl where her parents are, which sends her into a panic. Despite just meeting her, the girl accepts Siris's comforting hug and agrees to follow her back to Yggdrasil headquarters. After Caroline looks into Nina's past, she informs Siris and the adjutant that Nina's parents were likely transformed into monsters by Tytogen contamination and then killed in front of her by the military. The adjutant is concerned that Nina may never recover from the trauma, but Siris insists that they will find a way to help her. Later, the adjutant checks on Siris in her room. She tells him that she's lost nearly all of her memories from before the descent and can only rely on recordings, but that sometimes she can't remember even after playing the recording. Still, as long as she has her recordings, she feels like she has some sort of tangible memory. She believes Nina needs those sorts of memories right now. The following day, Siris and the adjutant are deployed to the same area to analyze what happened. Shortly after reaching their location, they're told to instead find Nina's old house to recover Tytogen that is hidden there. Siris jumps at the opportunity to go to Nina's house and quickly springs into action. As they near the house, they are nearly overwhelmed by changed enemies, and Siris is in danger of being flooded by Tytogen contamination. The situation deteriorates to the point that Caroline calls the mission off, but Siris insists that she must retrieve something from Nina's house and refuses to back down. The adjutant sees her determination and agrees to take the gamble. They eventually make it to the house, but they are surrounded by enemies, and Siris is on the verge of flooding due to the dense Tytogen. She quickly looks around the house and stuffs something in her bag, then loses control. As I touched on earlier, Siris's Deus is Osiris. When operatives become flooded, the god inside them takes over. They become incredibly powerful, but there's no guarantee they won't turn on their allies. However, this is exactly what the adjutant was gambling on. Osiris is the god of the underworld, and in Snowbreak, this gives him the power to kill his enemies simply by judging them to be unworthy of life. Once Siris floods, she instantly kills all of the surrounding enemies. The adjutant then gives her an emergency injection to end the flooded state before he, too, is killed. Moments later, other members of the Heimdall Force arrive as backup and carry Siris, who has passed out, to safety. When the adjutant sees what Siris was fighting so hard to retrieve, he immediately understands why it was so important to her. It is a framed family photo of Nina and her parents smiling happily together. He remarks that Siris fought so hard to bring Nina a tangible memory because she knew how it felt to lose her own. Once Siris recovers, she brings the photo to Nina, who is shocked to see it. Siris gently pats Nina on the head and tells her, "You've got to take good care of your precious memories." This line is going to come up later. You may wish to make a note of it. As with many other personal files, we're not meant to see the main character, Siris, grow very much. Instead, the player character, the adjutant, grows by learning more about Siris. Their relationship also grows. Siris now knows she can trust the adjutant to help her fight for the things she considers important, even when it becomes dangerous.
Can I get a photo of the two of us together?
In contrast to personal vows, bond stories almost always see each character grow significantly, usually with the adjutant's help. They highlight the distinction between how a character feels when they first meet you and how they feel once you've gotten to know each other. Or at least they used to, but we'll get to that soon enough. Siris's bond story begins with her forgetting to pick up her dry cleaning. This is a common occurrence, so much so that, according to a base puzzle reward, people within the company joke that Siris has contracted the Heimdall force to pick up her dry cleaning. In this case, the adjutant is the one asked to deliver her clothes. Siris thanks the adjutant by giving him a soda. Unfortunately, it is a strange, spicy soda that sends him into a coughing fit. This is an allusion to how Siris is the only operative that enjoys Cherno's unusually spiced and flavored cooking. The drink is Cherno's deep sea molten soda water, as mentioned in one of Siris's base events. This was also demonstrated in Siris's Goldfish personal foul, where she shared Cherno's handmade ghost pepper tuna sushi with Caroline and nearly sent the latter to the infirmary. Honestly, the adjutant should have known better. In addition to eating her cooking, we also know from one of Cherno's base events that Siris and Enya helped Cherno learn how to sew rag dolls. Altogether, this demonstrates Siris's absurd taste buds and further shows how she befriends everyone she meets, even shy oddballs with lethal culinary skills. Every bond story starts at the beginning of the character's relationship with the adjutant, so this is the first time the adjutant is seeing Siris catalog her memories. She notes that she spends half an hour every day tagging and sorting her photographs and recordings. I want to specify that this is separate from her morning study sessions, where she reminds herself of who everyone is. At night, she creates detailed files and categorizes them appropriately, as she is still able to remember the day's events. That way, she can review the files the next morning to make up for what she forgot overnight. When asked, Siris excitedly shows off the search index she's created before realizing she's gotten a bit carried away. She apologizes and asks the adjutant for a picture to put in her event file. While she takes it, he notices that she is very serious about maintaining a certain distance from him. After she takes the picture, the adjutant notices a folder on the terminal she's using to organize her memories labeled Sealed. He notes that it contains a large number of files and asks her about it. Siris admits that there are some things she can't remember, even after reviewing her recordings and pictures. She laments that such memories are basically lost, and all she can do is put them in the sealed folder and hope that one day she'll truly remember. Not long after this, she once again forgets to pick up her dry cleaning. The adjutant grabs it for her and delivers it again. Based on how casually he does it, Siris suspects that this is not the first time such a thing has happened. Since we know that she made an event file for the last time, we can presume that it was labeled as low importance and was not included in her morning memory reload. Upon learning that it is, in fact, the second time, Siris apologizes. The adjutant jokes that she never paid him the dry cleaning fee from last time either, but has to quickly clarify that it was only a joke when she brings out her wallet. Siris takes a moment to figure out if it was a joke or if he's just letting her off the hook, but the adjutant feels that her eyes penetrate through his values into his very soul. This is, once again, a reference to Siris as being a manifestation of Osiris. He quickly changes the subject and asks how her memory organization is going. She remarks that she's archiving the mission they did earlier that day and invites him to look. She opens the adjutant's directory and selects the subpath with the day's date. We don't know what the mission was, but it is marked as low importance, so it was likely uneventful. Even so, the file contains audio recordings, pictures, a detailed, written summary, and even a record of how Siris felt. This suggests that she is determined to be able to remember everyday missions, even if they aren't important enough to be included in her morning briefing every day. After exiting the mission file, Siris happens to see a folder named Layla. She stares at it and slowly realizes that nothing comes to mind when she sees it. It contains information about a previous member of the Heimdall force, someone who left before the adjutant took over, but nothing in the file rings a bell for Siris. She stares at it for several minutes and remembers nothing. Finally, she sighs and drags the entire folder into her sealed files. Another memory lost, presumably never to be recovered. Sometime later, the adjutant resolves to help Siris do something about her recently lost memory. Her frustrated expression as she tried to recall it has been stuck in his mind. He visits her again, this time without dry cleaning, and asks if she's ever recovered a memory that she had to seal away. She replies, never. Let's pause for a second to make sure we understand what's happening here. In addition to her unusual memory loss, Siris also has normal memory decay like any human being without Shinjing's hyperthymesia, the condition which forces her to remember everything. In order to recall events, Siris keeps detailed notes that let her reconstruct what happened based on the slivers and fragments that she remembers. However, if these fragments disappear due to normal memory decay, and she hasn't reviewed the file in so long that no new fragments have formed, then none of her notes will help. No matter how much she reviews them, it will be as if she's watching a movie as an audience member, where the main character just happens to look like her. The adjutant proposes to help her recover her memories of the former Heimdall Force member, Layla. Siris hesitates because she's afraid that is impossible, but she is eventually convinced. The adjutant has a plan. If they can find more information on Layla, it may trigger a fragmented memory that her other notes don't mention. And since Layla worked for Yggdrasil, Caroline certainly has some sort of additional information on her. The two quickly go to see Caroline, and the adjutant shares their plan as Siris is still hesitant to burden anyone with her troubles. Caroline says that her outside memories would be just another audience perspective, but she notes that Layla had a good relationship with Siris, and she never cleaned out her locker, so there might be something in there that Siris recognizes. Whenever Siris is ready, she can ask Caroline for the code to Layla's locker. Over a week later, Siris is still hesitant. She's afraid that whatever she finds still won't be enough. If she never tries to recover the memory, she can hope that it's possible. But if she tries and fails, she has nothing left to hang on to. The adjutant decides to help her along, so he swings by the laundry department and picks up her dry cleaning before heading to her room. While Siris is surprised to see that she forgot her dry cleaning, she remembers that this isn't the first time the adjutant has brought it to her. This suggests that she has been reviewing the event files from the previous times. When the adjutant asks Siris about Layla, she says that she's worried that it's impossible to bring back any original memories this way. She says she's worked with many people but forgotten all of them in the end. This is a subtle nod to her lost friendship with Shinjing. Siris laments that she doesn't have the faintest memory of Layla, despite getting along quite well with her, in yet another parallel to Shinjing. Finally, she says that she worries that she may forget the adjutant one day, no matter how many records she keeps. As tears fill her eyes, she reveals that she was trying to keep him at arm's length so that she wouldn't feel so horribly guilty when she inevitably forgot him. When the adjutant felt she was serious about maintaining her distance earlier, this was her motivation. This is an inversion of her usual friendly demeanor that reveals a bleak possibility of a cold and unfeeling future Siris who has abandoned the idea of forming friendships because of the pain she feels when she forgets them. Despite being kind, caring, and friendly, she is in danger of letting her fear of forgetting consign her to a life of loneliness. This character development is likely the result of losing so many memories at once in the descent. If she has another accident in the future, will she have to rebuild all of her relationships from scratch again?
I have no memory of anything from before the Titans came. Don't know who I was, what kind of life I lived, if I had a family.
The adjutant reassures her that they will recover her lost memories somehow, though he doesn't have a specific plan. Still, this calms Siris down somewhat, and they discuss investigating her forgotten friend, Layla. They return to Caroline and get Layla's passcode, then open her locker. It contains nothing but a single voice recorder. A few days later, Siris visits the adjutant in his room and brings him his dry cleaning. He's surprised to see she remembered, and she says she made a special note of it. After dropping off the clothes, Siris says she's having trouble working up the courage to listen to Layla's voice recording, and the adjutant, realizing she needs support, suggests they listen to it together. Layla begins her recording with a bit of teasing, but eventually reminds Siris that things that happen don't cease to exist just because you lose the memories. Even if Siris forgets, Layla still remembers. Even if everyone forgets, it doesn't change the fact that it happened. Layla tells Siris to embrace forgetting, to hold her head high and keep moving forward. Siris is immensely comforted by this message. She thanks the adjutant for helping her to find it and supporting her along the way. She remarks that she's very lucky to have a friend like him and gives him a surprise hug. Afterward, she brings him to the terminal where she organizes her memories and shows him as she adds the keywords special and important to his folder. She tells him that this is the first special folder she has ever created, and that if one day she ends up forgetting him like she forgot Layla. She trails off here, and the adjutant finishes her sentence for her. He says that if she forgets him, she should seal his folder away with a smile. She promises that she will. This is a powerful moment of significant character growth. Siris still wants to recover past recordings, but she's no longer afraid of losing memories naturally. She's escaped from the weight of a growing pile of orphaned memories and changed the bleak future where she becomes cold and unfeeling due to her fear of forming new connections. In the process, she has even made another special connection. One can't help but notice that this once again parallels her relationship with Xinjing. Rather than tell Siris about their former friendship and burden her with the weight of a relationship she will never remember, Xinjing allows Siris to forget peacefully and instead forges a new friendship. After all, the time they spent together before still happened whether Siris remembers it or not, and nothing can change that. Or almost nothing.
Past Siris, present Siris. Is one of them the real me, and one of them not?
In patch 1.6, Snowbreak made its first major retcon. For the uninitiated, retcon stands for retroactive continuity. In this context, it means that previous events were erased or changed. Specifically, all explicit mentions of Siris and Xinjing's former friendship were removed from the game. I hope that, based on what we've learned, it is immediately obvious what a seismic shift this is for both characters. In Xinjing Ethereal Cloud's personal file, she struggles with memories of a relationship that everyone else has forgotten about. The parallels to Siris's Bond stories are impossible to miss. Siris avoids getting close to the adjutant so that she doesn't create memories she will eventually forget. Siris learns that memories are worth making even if they are not permanent. Shenjing learns that memories are worth making even if they are permanent. But after the retcon, this parallel and many others are no longer as vibrant. To state the reason briefly, the devs were concerned that players thought Siris and Shenjing were too close. Changes to remove friendly relationships between characters are likely to become more common going forward. In fact, this isn't even the only friendship that was retconned away for Siris. I want to reiterate that characters and character changes must be viewed in context. Since the purpose of the game has shifted, we can't judge the new characters in the same way we judge the old characters in terms of if they're good for the game. At lunch, it made sense to have canon relationships that enriched each character's story. Now, as the direction has shifted to master love, it makes sense to remove all relationships that do not directly involve the adjutant. Perhaps I should take a moment to define what master love is. When Snowbreak first launched, it was harem-light. There were no male banners. While there was one male playable character in closed beta, he was never in a banner like the other closed beta characters. The more than a dozen characters that were in banners were all female. The main character could grow closer to these girls over time, but the relationships were varying degrees of explicit. Almost all could be read as friendships if the player wanted. By contrast, in a master love story, all eligible female characters are assumed to be instantly in love with the main character from the start. This isn't based on any sort of interaction. They exist primarily to love and serve the main character by definition. This is why any positive relationships they have tend to be limited to general friendship with a tinge of jealousy if they are both pursuing the master. It is okay for Life and Finny to be rivals because that isn't a positive relationship, even though it is not hostile. However, Siris and Shenjing had a specifically defined, positive relationship which was too much even before Snowbreak set out in an explicitly master love direction. In patch 1.8, Siris's Bond story was also retconned. In this instance, the whole thing wasn't nuked, but over a dozen lines were changed, added, or removed. Let's go through them quickly to see what they changed and see what we can learn about what to expect from Snowbreak's new direction. In her first Bond story, the adjutant originally notices that Siris is intentionally keeping her distance from him. We learn later on that this is because she wants to avoid making another close friend to reduce the pain she feels when she inevitably forgets them. In the revised story, the adjutant instead feels that Siris is acting in an unspecified special way towards him. We will later learn that she fell in love at first sight and is having trouble containing herself. The theme of Siris setting herself on the path to become cold and unfeeling due to her fear of losing attachments is gone. The second change comes when Siris is showing the adjutant a recording of the unspecified mission they went on earlier that day. The adjutant notices that the file is marked low importance in the original, but this is changed to the file being marked with the star. In the original, the mission wasn't noteworthy and not something Siris needed to add to her morning briefing. The low importance tag wasn't on the adjutant's folder, but on the file for that specific mission. The main purpose of this line is to illustrate that Siris organizes her files by importance. Then, when she adds the tag important to the adjutant's entire folder at the end, we can better grasp the significance of it. In the revised version, we're not told what the star means at first, but in a later change we see that it means important, as the line about Siris adding the tags special and important is changed to her adding the tag special next to an existing star. Did you catch that? In the original version, Siris marks a foul inside of the adjutant's folder as low importance. In the revised version, she instead marks the foul with a star. But later on, in the revised version, the star is said to be on the adjutant's folder itself. What happened here is that someone mistook the low importance tag to be referring to the adjutant's entire folder instead of the specific mission foul, and thus thought the adjutant himself was being called unimportant. As a result, we no longer have a clear indicator of how she organizes her files and what the marking on the adjutant's folder means. Important files are first in line for review during her morning memory routine, but we never explicitly learn what the star means and never get a hint of how it interacts with her memory categorization system. We should also take note of the star itself. Siris tells the adjutant when she is first showing off her organization system that it is easy for her to find things despite her memory issues because she uses a robust system of keywords. Every morning, she can sort the files by importance or pull up files related to this or that specific topic. She doesn't have to rely on herself remembering anything because the keywords keep everything in order. So, what does the star mean? If Siris wakes up and sees a star, how does she know what it means? What if she forgets what it means? We have no precedent for her forgetting words, and she can also look up their definition if she somehow forgets what important means. But we do have precedent within this very Bond story of her losing abstract connections between symbols. The use of the star undermines her portrayal as a character who essentially reloads the bulk of their memory every day through overwhelming effort. The next change in Siris's Bond story concerns her close friend, Layla. Whereas Layla was originally a former member of the Heimdall Force who was close to Siris, she is now a former member of the logistics department whose life Siris saved once. Several of the revisions are simply removing any reference of Siris and Layla as friends. Just like with Shinjing, we once again see Siris losing a friend due to revisions. In this case, it was a character that appears only in her Bond story in a silhouette of a generic NPC. It is clear that in Snowbreak's new direction, we should not expect operatives to have many specific friendships with each other or other people in the world. In this same patch, a base event where Nita and Marion spoke to each other about training together was also removed. And, in the previous patch, Enya and Cherno's close relationship was conspicuously absent, so we can expect this isn't going to be limited to just Siris. When Siris is discussing how she forgot Layla in the original, she is concerned that she doesn't have the faintest memory of her once important friend. I previously pointed out that this is a clear parallel to her relationship with Shinjing. However, after the retcons and revisions, there is no relationship with Shinjing to parallel, and Siris now says she doesn't remember Layla even though they, quote, got along fine. Putting Shinjing aside, what's lost here is a parallel to Siris's relationship to the adjutant. In the original, Siris was hesitant to get close to the adjutant for fear of forgetting him even if they had a close relationship. The subtext of the story was that Siris had already forgotten someone with whom she had a close relationship, with the additional subtext of her having forgotten Shinjing with whom she had a close relationship. As players, we are placed into a position to see that Siris is afraid of forgetting people that are important to her, and we see that she is struggling with the knowledge of forgetting a specific person that was important to her, and we know that there was another important connection she's forgotten so completely that she doesn't even know to worry about it. We are faced with the reasonable despair she must feel in knowing that everyone she loves might just disappear from her mind forever, despite the astounding effort she makes to remember them. The heart of Siris's Bond story in the original was that she learned to cherish her present memories and relationships, even if she would eventually forget them. In the revised story, She decides that the reason she forgot her earlier relationships is that they just weren't important enough to her. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's backtrack a bit. Siris originally tells the adjutant that she thought being ordinary friends with him would be enough to protect her from feeling too much pain when she inevitably forgot him. She says she's scared that she may forget him, a person who is important to her, like she forgot Layla, another person who was important to her. In the revised story, Siris's line about being ordinary friends is recontextualized. There's a new line after it where she says that she can't stop herself from wanting to be closer to the adjutant. In another new line, she tells him she wants him to look at her with his gentle gaze, then trembles with emotion. As we saw in a revision earlier in the story, Siris is no longer creating distance to avoid the pain of forgetting. Instead, she has found someone who is worth remembering, the implication being that no one else cleared that bar before, certainly not the friends that were revised out of existence. If you've been taking notes, you may remember that in addition to her memory issues, Siris has severe face blindness. She's a very unlikely candidate to experience love at first sight. Not only will she not remember who you are, but she also won't remember what you look like. But we must remember that this is a master love revision, which means each character fundamentally must immediately fall in love regardless of any circumstances, so this is not technically a fault. Part of what separates master love from less extreme harems is its tendency to have instant all-out love of the main character. In the previous patch, the first since the master love shift, we also saw Cherno and Rosalt independently fall for the adjutant immediately upon meeting him. This is a high enough priority that individual character traits cannot be allowed to interfere. Layla's message is largely the same at first, but it is also recontextualized by an added line. She tells Siris to embrace forgetting and hold her head high. Previously, this clearly referred to her previous lines about how Siris's past relationships still existed even if she forgets them. Now it follows with the line about how Siris should be proud for saving so many lives. Layla can't emphasize that Siris's relationships are not in vain because she no longer has a relationship to Siris to use as an example. Instead, she says that Siris is effective at her job even if she doesn't remember it. This is no longer a message from her forgotten important friend about how Siris shouldn't give up on important relationships. It's just a recording from someone she happened to save once, then barely spoke to again. This doesn't speak to Siris's primary theme. She is a character who is desperate to remember the people important to her and afraid to create new attachments, despite being naturally friendly. Telling her not to worry about forgetting the people she saved misses the point. She wasn't doing that to begin with. While Siris is relieved by this message in the original, the adjutant apologizes for not being able to actually restore her memories as he set out to do. Their failure to restore her memories is a powerful subversion. There's still a happy ending, just not the one we expected. Siris's condition isn't just hand-waved away or magically solved. Instead, she learns to live with it and to thrive in all of her relationships, whether they are temporary or not. A central conflict of her character, the fear of forgetting those important to her, is resolved without removing the other conflicts, like the fact that she may forget them. In the revised story, the adjutant still apologizes for not being able to restore her memories, but the ending of her Bond story changes in a way that makes his apology seem insidious. We'll get to that in a second. In the original, Siris adds the keywords special and important to the adjutant's folder. The significance of the important keyword was established earlier, but she notes that special is a new keyword created just for him. In the revision, the adjutant's folder was already marked with a star, so she just adds special. The meaning of the star is never explicitly defined in the new version, and it was never shown to exist on other files, like important was in the original scene. Because of this, the added special keyword isn't really special. The adjutant already had a unique marker on his folder. The change to the ending, however, carries much more impact. In the original, Siris considers the possibility that she may forget the adjutant even though he is uniquely special to her. The adjutant calmly asks her to seal his folder away with a smile if that happens. They both are aware that Siris's memories are fragile, and they both want to pursue a deeper relationship despite that. They accept her reality, but do not surrender to it. Siris responds without fear that she will follow his advice and seal her memories of him away with a smile. In the revision, she instead refuses. She says that marking the folder as special means that she will never seal it away. She declares that she won't forget him and that he won't let her forget him. The original Bond story shows Siris's progression from being so afraid of forgetting someone that she pushes them away, to accepting that she will forget them and building a deep relationship anyway. She learns to embrace her condition instead of allowing it to ruin her life. In the new story, she refuses to accept forgetting. The adjutant does not push back on this even after seeing what lies in store for her. Rather than resolving her fear, the new story just raises the stakes. Siris is being set up for increased devastation in the future while making, in another new line, an eternal agreement with the adjutant. An eternal agreement she is doomed to forget. Siris's growth in the new story is restricted to her relationship with the adjutant. She cannot make progress in general because her primary theme revolves around a fear of forgetting the people important to her, and she no longer has any important people besides the adjutant. Even people from her past that she has already forgotten were reduced in importance. At the same time, since it's a master love story, there can be no possibility of lost love in the future due to her forgetting him, because her purpose as a character in the story is to love and serve him. So her primary theme cannot be fully explored as there simply aren't any important relationships, past or present, that she is allowed to forget. Instead of a character who learns to cherish temporary relationships without suffering when she forgets them, we instead have one who insists that truly important relationships can't be forgotten, despite having already forgotten everyone she ever knew only 3 years ago.
I have no memory of anything from before the Titans came. Don't know who I was, what kind of life I lived, if I had a family.
一つ一つの瞬間で新たな自分を作る。
The Ksana personal file is the first wholly new piece of Siris lore in the new patch. We'll cover it first because it chronologically happens before the events in the main story, and those events will not make sense unless you have done the personal file. The new story begins with Siris doing nightly memory exercises. This is an odd choice since her memory issues, as established by existing lore, are not something that can be solved or mitigated with exercises, and it's unclear how the specific exercises shown even intend to do that. Siris has an abnormally short REM cycle, which means that she forgets most of what happened during the day when she falls asleep. Since this doesn't line up with what we see in the new story, we must conclude that the new story supersedes the old lore. One of the developers has gone on record saying that if there is a contradiction between current content and old content, we should assume the old content is out of character. Some base events and puzzle rewards may no longer be considered canon. During the exercises, Siris recites a single line 3 times, but makes a mistake in the second and third instances. This suggests that she is unable to remember things from one sentence to the next, which is, again, very different from her previously established condition and also different from how it is portrayed even in the new stories, except for small sections where it is convenient to the plot that she nearly instantly forgets specific things. Her reaction to the third line also appears to retcon her love of Cherno's cooking, brushing aside the last of her specifically defined non-adjutant relationships and further throwing the canonicity of base events into question. Once asleep, Siris dreams. Due to her condition, she is not supposed to be able to dream at all. She seems surprised to have had a dream, which suggests that the previous lore is intact. But if her condition is the same, then the nightly exercises would be fruitless, and she shouldn't have had an issue repeating the same sentence 3 times in a row. The old canon seems fractured, but the new canon is also unclear. This is going to become a pattern going forward. Within the dream, Siris' mother appears and suggests that there is a trick Siris can learn to avoid forgetting anything. Unfortunately, Siris can't remember what the trick is. We saw in her Bond story that Siris' struggle with her memory was reframed from a central character theme to merely an obstacle to her relationship with the adjutant that she somehow pledged to overcome. The new personal file seems to want to expand on that. Shortly after Siris wakes up, and before she does her morning memory routine, she is contacted by Freesia, who reminds her of the Ksana exosuit test she took the previous day. Siris does not initially remember the test, but she has no issues remembering Freesia, the adjutant, or her way around the base despite not having studied her recorded memories. She has no trouble remembering anything else throughout the conversation. If we're being generous, we could assume that she has had time to slowly amass permanent memories that allow this, but she also remembers the recent orders to head to New Hentiro, which she received mere days prior, which shouldn't be possible before her memory study session. Thus, while the beginning of the file seems to confirm her low REM condition, we quickly run into multiple situations that should not be possible if that is still true. In the first few minutes of the personal file, Siris is shown to be unable to remember what she's saying from one sentence to the next, but also able to remember information for several days without studying. Since the old canon is partially confirmed and partially ignored, we can't get a consistent read on Siris' condition, which limits our ability to set expectations for her going forward and obfuscates a facet of her character. But for now, let's set the continuity errors aside, as further exploration will not give us a clearer picture. Near the end of the file, Siris has another flashback to her mother speaking. This, along with the dream, should be massive developments. Siris did not previously remember her parents and was not able to dream. The memories she is fighting to recover, and that she wants to venture deep into the restricted zones to find, largely concern her family. A dream about her parents should be a life-changing event, but besides the initial shock over having a dream, it doesn't come up. During the end of file flashback, Siris again sees her mother talking about a trick to avoid forgetting, and immediately thinks that if she could just learn that one simple trick, then she could remember everything about the adjutant. Based on her reactions, we can see that Siris' desires have changed in the new update. She is no longer interested in recovering memories of her past, not even of her family. She only wants to remember the adjutant. After the flashback, Siris asks the adjutant to conduct the first field test for her new exosuit near her old house. It is implied that she wants to go to her old house to get the recording pin that will teach her the trick to avoid forgetting anything about the adjutant. The adjutant somehow anticipated this request, despite Siris only learning about the pin just now and not saying anything about it to him. He knows that she wants to, quote, get the recorder pin with her backed up memories. This is, itself, a retcon. Siris has an entire server, at least, dedicated to storing her memories from her 3 years in the Heimdall Force. She uses a terminal to interact with the server and, in previous lore, is rarely seen without it in hand. There is also a base puzzle reward that notes that she has been archiving her memories on hard disks, notebooks, post-it notes, and more son's childhood. Audio recording pens have only previously been shown to be used during the day, and then their contents are uploaded during her nightly memory organization routine. We know that she had memory backups stored at her old house of her 24 pre-Heimdall years. There's no way they fit onto a single recorder pen. Fortunately for Siris, the Titagen contamination in the drowned sections has been decreasing since the events of patch 1.7. This has, presumably, resulted in the opening of the zones she was waiting for.
I hope they open up the zone soon. Let me go home. There's something I need to find there.
This should, again, be a massive event with repercussions for millions of people in the world. Prior to the descent, the containment zone was the largest city in the country of home. Even if we only look at Yggdrasil, this is the first chance they've had to destroy the world tree that started it all, since they previously couldn't get close due to the massive Titagen contamination. But somehow, Siris was not aware of it before, and the adjutant never mentioned it before this, nor does anyone else seem aware of this opportunity. Anyway, they plan to do the test near her house and pick up the single recorder pin. As they push into the drowned sections, the adjutant says it isn't even close to the first time he's been there. If that is the case, then what was Siris talking about when she said the zones were closed? Why didn't she ever try to reach her house if it was possible to enter these sections before? While this line isn't a direct retcon to Siris, it does obscure what she wanted to do and was able to do in the old canon. In the new canon, it implies that she simply wasn't concerned with recovering her memories before, as she, presumably, could have made this trip earlier. It implies that she simply did not care about anything else enough. Nothing else was important enough to remember. This is a stark departure from the Siris that carefully records and catalogs even mundane events with the goal of remembering as much as possible. Siris has another flashback upon reaching her old neighborhood, but she is completely uninterested in it. She tries to push it out of her mind and focus on the present task. When they enter her old apartment, she has another flashback of her mother. Not only does she not bring it up, but moments later she says that she used to live in this apartment but has no memory of it, despite just remembering something about it. They begin searching her apartment and find a few pictures of her as a child. Siris's only response is to forbid the adjutant from showing the pictures to anyone back at base. In contrast to her initial characterization, Siris is completely uninterested in her own past, even when standing in the home she was once so desperate to return to. If we can zoom in for a moment, let's talk about Siris' response to finding pictures of her past. Assuming you've been taking notes, you'll remember that in her Goldfish personal file, which was not revised, that she fought through severe Titagen contamination, ignored direct orders, and risked life and limb to retrieve a single family picture for a child who had lost their parents. At the time, she was portrayed as having done all of that because she understood the suffering that child was going to go through better than anyone else. It was a defining character moment where we learned about what she wanted, saw what she was willing to do for it, and even got a taste of the awesome power she was capable of when the adjutant gambled on her flooding. Yet, now that she has the opportunity to get pictures of her own, she doesn't even look at them. It is implied that she could have collected them earlier and just didn't bother. We get no reaction to the pictures themselves, just the prospect of other people seeing them. Outside of that one line, the pictures are never brought up again. Eventually, their search brings them to the master bedroom. Siris says this is where her mother stayed, and the adjutant responds that she was a tender and loving mother. This surprises Siris, as she never disclosed anything about her mother to the adjutant. He tells her that when he absorbed the Titagen from her body shortly after they reached the apartment, he saw some fragmented memories which included her mother. Let's pause here. The adjutant thinks that Siris has no memories of her parents and asks him to enter the drowned section to recover those memories. In the process, he discovers some latent memories of her past and just doesn't tell her. He doesn't find this important enough to mention. And when Siris hears that the adjutant has seen memories of her mother, she doesn't ask a single question about it. She just doesn't care. They find the recording pin, and Siris's only reaction is that she won't ever forget anything about the adjutant again after listening to it, but they are interrupted by attacking Changed. The tree was, apparently, just baiting them into the drowned sections and was now attempting to kill them. Why would the tree try this tactic? Why would it send only foot soldiers but no titans? Why hasn't it done anything like this before in the 3 to 6 years since the descent? None of those questions are ever answered, but I digress. Let us focus on Siris. After escaping the Changed, Siris has another illusion where she is speaking to her mother. She says that past memories, the recorder pin, and a way to avoid forgetting are, quote, only the past, only a facade. Now that I've lost my past self, all I really want is to remember a certain someone. Just remembering him is enough. I just don't want to let him down again. All I want is to not forget anything about him. This lays out, in no uncertain terms, exactly what the new Siris wants. She wants to remember and serve the adjutant, and nothing else. As her illusion continues, Siris's mother says she's glad her daughter found something that's more important than memories of the past. Despite what Siris just said, she replies to her mother that she's still afraid of forgetting the adjutant, so she needs the recorder pin to avoid forgetting things. Her mother says that she can just ask the adjutant and he'll have all the answers, then reminds her that she needs to keep moving forward. Then she turns into a butterfly and flies off while Siris instantly recovers all of her memories of the past. If your notes are properly organized, you should recall that Layla also told Siris to move forward in her message. However, when Layla said it, she meant that Siris should move forward with forging new relationships without being afraid that she would eventually forget them. When Illusion Mom says it, she means that Siris shouldn't worry about recovering memories of past relationships, but should instead focus only on the one that is important enough to hold on to. Somehow, while Siris was unconscious, the adjutant fought through the horde of change while carrying her at least 2 kilometers on his back in titagen contamination so thick that the area would normally be strictly off limits. In any other situation, this would result in titans being summoned, but thankfully that didn't happen here. Whereas before, a horde of change and high contamination meant certain death without Siris's Delos overloading, now the adjutant can clear them with a handgun while carrying an ally. What's that? Did I skip over something? Yes, you heard correctly. Siris recovered all of her memories of the past. It happens in a throwaway line with no fanfare. Her once greatest desire is fulfilled magically, and she doesn't even react. The mechanics of this are incredibly dubious. Her memories aren't in her head, but inaccessible. The issue is that they do not get into her brain in the first place. There's no way for her to suddenly be able to access them without external aids. But we have already seen that consistency should not be expected. The only constant is that Siris now has a vague desire to serve and remember the adjutant, and little else in terms of what she wants as a character. The Master Love variant of Siris fulfills the role she is meant to play, but no one can honestly say that it is the same character as the Siris we had before. Let's take a quick break to point out some lore inconsistencies and story structure snafus before wrapping up our look at the Ksana personal file. Siris says, out loud, that her memories were, quote, reactivated due to all the titagen that was contaminating her body. However, as she didn't even flood, we know that she has previously endured greater titagen contamination with no effect on her memory. This is an offhand attempt at a justification for a major story element that the writing team just pulled out of their ass. They could have just not bothered to explain it, and that would be better. Siris has no shown reaction to her memories being reactivated. The adjutant, however, asks her about them because he wants to know more about her past. This is the primary point in this entire personal file, that someone is interested in Siris's past for the sake of learning more about her. And it's not Siris. Anyway, she says she inherited her disorder from her father, but the symptoms she says her father had are completely different from her own. Whereas she has some sort of REM deficiency-induced anterograde amnesia, which just means that she can't remember things going forward. Her father had straight-up dementia. He only forgot small things at first upon meeting her mother, but forgot more and more over time until he lost all cognitive function before she could form any memories of him. Siris, on the other hand, forgets almost everything when she goes into deep sleep, but only has mild memory loss while awake, along with severe face blindness. While these are both memory conditions, they are not the same condition. They don't even list similar symptoms within the story. Alright, venting over, let's get back on task. Siris says that every day before meeting the adjutant was like a recording playing on repeat. She was just going through the motions. But after meeting him, she discovered there were moments worth remembering. Once again, she is directly telling us what her new character is. No more is the Siris that cherished every relationship and never failed to be the friendliest person in the room. For the new Siris, no one else is even worth remembering. As the story comes to a close, Siris has one last illusion in which her mother tells her that the secret to not forgetting anything is love. If she passionately and honestly expresses her love to the person she cherishes, then she won't forget them anymore. It might mean that she just doesn't forget the confession of love itself, but it's not really clear. It's also not clear why this trick doesn't seem to work unless someone has told you about the trick. If the trick prevents you from forgetting people who you love, why did Siris forget her mother? If the trick only works for romantic love, then why is a mother telling this to her very young daughter? Siris seems to suggest that prior to the descent, she used this trick to remember everything. But does that mean she passionately loved everything? And why, if that is the case, does she still have memory issues after learning the trick? Setting that aside, the adjutant recycles some lines from the Mingdeng event here. Previously, Shinjing said that everyone, not just Siris, forgets. In her case, she was lamenting that she would, one day, be the only person who remembered that experience at the festival. Now, the adjutant simply says that the fleeting memories somehow make our bonds more precious. He says that the memories will pile up, dissolve into time, and become a part of who we are. He seems to be saying that the things we forget are somehow important to who we are, as opposed to the things we remember. He follows it up by saying that Siris only needs to focus on honestly facing her feelings. There are parts of this that make sense, but the idea that forgotten memories are part of who we are doesn't quite land. The idea should sound familiar though. The intent seems to have been a fusion of the discarded Shinjing and Layla story beats. The parallel to Shinjing was supposed to show that Siris's obsession with remembering everything was a dead end. Shinjing naturally remembers everything, but she, too, is struggling to build relationships. She and Siris both learned to refocus on the present, or they would have if their friendship hadn't been axed. Meanwhile, Layla originally taught Siris that faded memories don't diminish the relationship she had. However, in the revised version, Layla doesn't have an important relationship with Siris, so she can't speak to Siris's fear of forgetting important relationships. The change in the ending of the Bond story to have Siris swear off ever forgetting the adjutant, instead of choosing to allow a deeper relationship with him in spite of the impermanence of her memory, also undermines the original point about how memories don't need to be permanent to be important. So when the adjutant tries to tie everything together, there are no strings to tie because the story threads were previously cut off to facilitate a singular focus on the adjutant. Siris's story was never, at its core, about memory. It was a story about relationships. Memory was simply a complicating factor, something that prevented her from being able to accomplish her goals. By removing or downgrading her relationships to fit the demands of the Master Love era, her story and character were drastically changed. They had to be. In the Goldfish personal file, we see a Siris who meets a stranger and befriends her when no one else, not even the adjutant, can get her to open up. Siris then retrieves a tangible memory for that stranger at great personal risk. This is not an event that Siris will remember in the long run, but she does it anyway because she recognizes the importance of the girl's relationships with her parents, even if they are now firmly in the past. In the Ksana personal file, we see a Siris who only cares about the adjutant, who is only motivated by her desire to remember and serve the adjutant, and who does not consider the girl she fought so hard for before as worth remembering. This is not the same person. As usual, the main story is relatively light on character growth. We'll be skipping the Yerus arc entirely as the points to be made there are redundant with points made elsewhere, but there are two moments in the first entry of the new Hentiro arc that we should touch on before we wrap this up. The first moment illustrates how this new Siris is different in what she is able to do, even if that is portrayed inconsistently. The second shows us what she wants is different and how her themes have changed. Shortly after entering the virtual world, the adjutant and Siris find themselves stuck. In order to move ahead, they must create a path where none exists. Siris closes her eyes and convinces herself that there's a step in front of her, and when she raises her foot, one actually appears. She explains that the adjutant's recent explanation of the principle behind the realms gave her the idea. In response, the adjutant has her close her eyes. He says that she will very quickly forget where she is and describes a different reality to her over and over until she believes it, then has her walk up a non-existent staircase that materializes under her feet. As your notes will show, this is a substantial departure from what Siris is previously shown to be capable of. Her short-term memory is mildly impaired, but for the most part she will remember the day's events until she goes to sleep that night. That is why she spends every evening recording what happened during the day and every morning memorizing her notes in order of importance. She's not a literal goldfish, and literal goldfish don't actually have short memories. Her memory doesn't wipe itself every few seconds or she wouldn't be able to function. In fact, this is even demonstrated in the same episode of the same chapter where the adjutant concocts this plan. Earlier, Siris noted that they had been following the same road since they entered the realm. She even remembers the adjutant's explanation of the realm's principles. When she closes her eyes for her initial test, she in no way forgets where she is. Once the adjutant's trick concludes, she opens her eyes and instantly knows where she is and remembers everything they've done up to that point. So why, exactly, does the adjutant believe that Siris will forget where she is if she closes her eyes? Why does it work? Put simply, it was convenient to the plot and could be used to justify praise of the adjutant. Nearby NPCs exclaim that he bent the realms to his will, despite Siris being the one doing the work. Siris herself also gives all credit to the adjutant. This was more important than consistent characterization for Siris. As we have seen in the Master Love era, Various characters' capabilities and motivations can change drastically from moment to moment if it allows the adjutant to look cool. This can't quite be called a retcon because it contradicts things that were already confirmed by the new canon. Rather, this is a continuity error and a major plot point, but one that must be considered when constructing a profile of the new Siris. The second moment we need to look at is at the end of the story. It has been revealed that Siris visited New Hentiro in 2054. Ganges gives Siris a flash drive containing information about her earlier visit. Siris says that it is another memory she has recovered and thanks him, then decides not to view the information and instead gives the flash drive to the adjutant. She refers to it as a precious memory. This phrase should stand out to you. I told you to make a note of it a long time ago. We'll get to why in a moment. Siris says that rather than some old memory, she wants to remember her new visit to New Hentiro with the adjutant. It is unclear why viewing this old memory would in any way be connected to remembering the new visit. She refers to her past self as confused and says that as long as the adjutant remembers her, it proves that she once existed. It seems that a singular focus on the adjutant isn't enough. Siris must also refuse any memories, even if they fall into her lap. Even if listening to them might be helpful for future missions. She was uninterested in the memories she found in her old home, and is similarly uninterested in any other memories from before she met the adjutant. The only time she has shown interest for old memories in the new material is in her revised Bond story, and even that was framed as overcoming her fear of forgetting the adjutant rather than a piece of her past she wanted to recover. Her speech also seems to confuse her themes. She talks about how the adjutant remembering her proves she existed, but at no point has Siris ever been worried that other people would forget her. In fact, a significant moment in her growth used to be when she was told in her Bond story that her friends and relationships still existed even if no one remembers them anymore. This moment still exists in her revised story. I have an idea where this theme is coming from, but first, let's get back to the precious memories. In her Goldfish personal file, after the hell she went through to get a family photo for Nina, the girl who lost her parents, Siris holds Nina while she cries and tells her, "You've got to take care of your precious memories." Later, in her Bond story, Siris learns that she's still herself, whether she has her precious memories or not. She still wants to have them, but she is no longer defining herself by what she can currently remember. Or, she wasn't. In the revised Bond story, Siris switches from defining herself by the precious memories of her past, and instead defines herself by her precious memories of the adjutant. It comes as no surprise then that in the new material, that is, in the Ksana personal file and the new Hentiro Arc, Siris is presented with several precious memories, and each time she refuses to look at them. Each time, she says that she doesn't need any memories that aren't of the adjutant. The reason Siris wants the adjutant to remember her is because she has defined herself entirely by how she remembers the adjutant and how he remembers her. There are barely any hints of who she used to be remaining. The Goldfish personal file wasn't revised in this update, but if it was, do you think Siris would have fought for Nina? Would the Siris who cares only about her memories of the adjutant have understood Nina's pain? Or would she simply complete the mission, mark it as unimportant, and forget all about the girl who, like everyone else, wasn't worth remembering? While I still think that we must judge characters in context, and we should consider that the new Siris must comply with Master Love values, we also can clearly see that the original Siris and the new Siris are completely different characters. They want different things, they have different capabilities, their relationship with other characters in the world is vastly different. As Snowbreak continues down the Master Love path and finds more time to retcon existing content, we should expect to see characters give up on what they wanted before in order to chase the adjutant. They will likely be portrayed as weaker and clumsier, and their capabilities will be less consistent. Any positive relationship they have with anyone besides the adjutant that is more specific than generally being friends will likely be removed. Everything is liable to change except their name and face. Still, as bleak as that may sound to someone who loves the old characters, I think we can find some solace in Layla's message. The characters we were fond of may change or even, functionally, cease to exist. But that doesn't mean they never existed. The stories we loved still happened, whether the characters remain true to them or not, whether they are revised or repurposed or not. Snowbreak may become unrecognizable to us, but we can still hope that the new audience ends up loving it as much as we did, even if their reasons are a little different. We can still hang on to our precious memories and, perhaps, find some other way to tell the stories these characters deserve.